It was just a couple years ago, it was a couple years ago, I told one of my friends that I liked to drink B&B brandy when I was stationed in Vietnam. Without hesitation, he looked at me and said, "You must have gotten very thirsty after killing babies all day long." I was appalled, but couldn't say anything. I found out later on he was in kindergarten when I was a captain in Vietnam. He had no idea what our experiences were or what we did over in Vietnam. I left Vietnam 45 years ago, and I generally haven't talked about it. Not to my wife, not to my grown children, not to anybody. I have a small display of my military accomplishments up in the library at home, but I do not have, nor have I ever worn, a Vietnam veteran's hat. Before I went to Vietnam, I asked a returning pilot, "What's it like? What can I expect going over there?" He told me, "Don't ask, because we don't talk about it." And I haven't. In all these years, I haven't talked about it. So this is my coming out story. I was stationed in Los Angeles as a missile propellants officer for the space program when I found out my replacement had shown up on station. An overseas assignment was in the works for me, but I was within 6 months of finishing my master's degree in chemistry, so I got the assignment delayed, but with the understanding I had to take whatever came up, and it was Vietnam. After a grueling 24-hour flight, I arrived in Saigon at 0500 hours, the 27th of July, 1972. Before deplaning, they told us, start taking malaria tablets, watch out for rabid dogs, and watch out for venomous snakes. Now they called them two-steppers, because if you got bit in 2 steps, you were going to be dead. I was not ready for any of this. I was able to catch a flight up to Da Nang and check in with my commanding officer, who was a Lieutenant Colonel Custer. Now, it's not the real Colonel Custer, but it was ominous nonetheless. I was the base fuels officer responsible for refueling all of the aircraft, running the service station, making sure the generators for the hospital and the water heaters for the barracks were all filled with petroleum. If it was petroleum, I was responsible for it. The fighter aircraft would take off about 0600 each morning on their first mission. They'd come back around 11 to refuel, rearm, grab something for lunch, and take off in the afternoon. My job was to get it done and get it done fast. The activity continued 7 days a week, and with no let-up, it just kept going on. The chaplain used to put a sign up that said, "Today is Sunday," and that's how we knew it was the end of a week in Vietnam. There were 5 of us that lived in a hooch or a barracks with 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, and a small kitchen. Alcohol and tobacco were rationed on a monthly basis, and we could get limited supplies in the base exchange. But we always looked forward to getting a care package from home. My wife sent me some pecans so I could make a pecan pie for Thanksgiving. I didn't know how to make a pecan pie. But I went to the library and got a recipe that didn't look too bad. And there I was in the kitchen making the pecan pie with my other officers. Now there was one gentleman, he was from the South, but he lived a rather simple, frugal life, not the Southern gentleman you'd expect. Well, he scolded me because I dumped the pecans into the pie. He said you need to arrange them in circles on the top and make it look good. So there we were arranging the pecans, which is a silly thing to do in a war zone, but in the end, it reminded us of home. We watched and listened overseas as Nixon tried to negotiate a peace agreement, and that failed. The word of the day was that peace is at hand. But that was false hope, and that dragged on and on and on, and we got tired of it. In December, Nixon authorized Operation Linebacker 2, and that was the strategic bombing of military and industrial facilities in and around Hanoi. We called it the 12 Days of Christmas. Every day, B-52s would line up and fly overhead, and then they would turn north and go towards Hanoi. Later on or in the evening, they would come back in the same formation, and we could count some of the losses. But we knew major damage was being inflicted on the North. It was an unsettling time for us because we were concerned that the local Viet Cong were going to step up their attacks on us. In January, the Army side of the base was bombed big time, and we were shocked at the magnitude of the attack that occurred. But we quickly found out it was actually friendly fire. An Air Force pilot from Thailand had mixed up his coordinates, and a squadron of F-4 fighters had bombed the base instead of his target a mile to the north. It was not a good day for anybody, but at least there were no casualties or injuries, although I did lose 2 petroleum storage tanks. But we made fun out of that too. In jest, we had a circular that we sent around on the base, and we paralleled the North Vietnamese words of the day that said, "The Army will not negotiate peace as long as the Air Force continues to bomb." We had another sick joke, and we knew we were at the tail end of a losing war, and our sick joke was, who wants to be the last American to die for their country? It seemed to go on and on and on without end, like a bad dream. You woke up, it was there. You went to work, it was there. You went to sleep at night, it was there. One of our favorite songs that we used to listen to was John Denver, "Take Me Home, Country Roads," for obvious reasons. This was my escape. When I heard that song, I could just imagine being far, far away on some quiet, peaceful country road. We used humor or whatever we could come up with to get through those long, grueling months in Vietnam. It's sort of like the characters in the TV show MASH, where they do those zany and crazy things. That's how they put up with the stress of the times, and we did the same thing. When I came back from Vietnam for several years, I couldn't watch MASH, and even today, it brings back some of these memories. On the 29th of March, 1973, I was on the last aircraft taking combat troops out of Vietnam. Giddy up. We're ready to go. We were counted by the North and the South Vietnamese to make sure all the Americans had left the country because POWs were being released from the North. Shortly after takeoff, the pilot announced, "We have now cleared Vietnam airspace." The aircraft erupted in wild celebration. There was another song that we used to listen to in Vietnam, a John Denver song, "The Readjustment Blues." Now, this was the song that was not released in the States, but it was released overseas, which is how we got our hands on it. And it talks about an infantry soldier coming back from Vietnam, and he goes to Washington, D.C., and there's a parade or a demonstration going on, and he sees the flag that he fought for, is flying there, but it was flying upside down. There were men there, and they had uniforms on, just like he used to have overseas. And they were carrying guns, just like he used to have too. But this time he was a civilian, and they were pointing their guns at him. Welcome home, soldier. When I came home, the war was over, so I didn't see a lot of these demonstrations that other people saw. When I landed in San Francisco, I remember that first cool breeze I got, and I was thankful that I survived, and I also told myself I'm never going to be shot at again. When we came back, we weren't being shot at, but we weren't welcome either. We were told not to wear our uniform off base, and we knew not to bring any attention to the fact that we had served in Vietnam. But what I wish the people would have understood is that we were just normal, honest people trying to do the best we could in a very turbulent time. Since Vietnam, wars have changed. No longer is it counterforce in some faraway country, it's countervalue in any hometown. The despised Vietnam vet has now been replaced by soldiers being held in high regard. It has taken terrorist attacks on our nation to give the veterans the respect that they deserve. I'm happy to have survived Vietnam, It had an effect on me. It taught me to do the best I can every day and to be thankful for what I have. But I'd rather be remembered for my peacetime accomplishments in the military over a 20-year career, and I'd rather be remembered for the work I did as an environmental scientist here in Iowa. And probably most of all, I'd like to be remembered as a friend to all the people that I've met along the way, because it's here in Iowa I've found my home and I've found my country road.